Hello and welcome to the Friday, February 5th, 2021, still waiting for caucus results edition of On Iowa Politics. This week, the still quotable Steve King, Republicans play defense, and SOS. Hi, I'm James Lynch of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. With me today are Bret Hayworth of the Sioux City Journal. Good morning, Bret.
Good morning.
Tom Barton of the Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, James.
Amie Rivers of the Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amie.
Good morning, James.
And Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up, gone but still talking. Surprise, surprise, former U.S. Rep. Steve King is defending Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, like a celebrity, is already going by her initials, MTG.
MTG.
Bret, you might have worried you wouldn't have Steve King to provide fodder for stories, but he came through for you this week in true Steve King fashion. What's he talking about? What does he have to say?
Yeah, I've been kind of monitoring his Twitter here and there just to make sure I didn't miss anything lately. And my boss, one of my editing bosses, contacted me yesterday. I said, I think we need to do a story on Taylor Greene and what Steve King is saying. And I'd seen a few tweets, and I said, yep, we need to do that story. So yes, he's about 5 weeks out of office, but still making news. So I guess he, as a definite far right, wing of the party, he saw a person who, in his view is, a plain spoken conservative, pointing to truths and, things that are, amiss in the country. And, she's obviously in battle for her QAnon and some of these conspiracy theories. And there's the new footage, I guess it was a couple years old, but this footage of her following the school shooting student, who had lost a bunch of fellow classmates, just being very, strident in her tone and her approach and stuff. And I guess Steve King saw her, sees her as a kindred spirit, and with the move to remove her from committees, obviously that hit home because, he was stripped of his committees basically 2 years ago right now, as that term began. And yeah, absolutely. He's pushed back that she should not be removed. And ultimately that House vote did happen yesterday, and she is going to be removed. But he also used his tweets, and these are just going on tweets, James. I have, haven't had to talk to him, but he also was able to bring up his old grievances with Kevin McCarthy, right? So in those, he's made sure to, that this is Kevin McCarthy's fault for not standing up firmly enough for her, and that he needed to buck up and do right by her in the way that he apparently didn't do right by Steve King 2 years ago when taking him off those committees.
Yeah. By the way, Bret, have you asked Steve King where he was on January 6th?
I have not. Huh.
I'm guessing that a month into the new session of Congress, Kevin McCarthy probably is asking himself if MTG is the price he has to pay for pushing out Steve King. Yeah. Got rid of one thorn in his side, but got another one who might be a bigger thorn, actually. Greene and her statements she made prior to being elected to the House have put Republicans in a tough spot, just as they thought they were getting a break from the constantly defending former President Donald Trump's comments and behavior. Here comes MTG. Tom, what have Senators Grassley and Ernst had to say about the Congresswoman from QAnon?
Yeah, so Ernst on Tuesday told reporters, quote, "She doesn't represent the party. I don't want her to be the face of our party. We don't need people that are promoting violence or anything like that." Grassley, talking to reporters on Wednesday, echoed that Greene shouldn't be the face of the Republican Party, and that he wouldn't disagree with anything that Senator Ernst has said. And while not presuming to, quote, speak for the wisdom or lack of wisdom of the people of Georgia who voted for Green. Grassley said, quote, but that's not the way the Republican Party is. So they, have both criticized Green and what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell characterized as Looney Tunes conspiracy theories that are, detached from reality. They both said, look, she doesn't speak for the party. This is not what, Republicans are about. And continue to kind of condemn and criticize her Looney Tunes beliefs.
Yeah. Has Marionette Miller Meeks weighed in on this yet, Tom?
Yeah, not that I've seen. I saw that Representative Ashley Hinson, weighed in on this, condemning MTG's comments, but stopping short of joining with Democrats and calling for her to be censured and stripped of her committee assignments like Steve King. But yeah, as of late, I haven't seen anything from Miller Meeks.
Okay. How about Randy Feenstra? Brett, has he had anything to say about his fellow freshwoman?
Nothing publicly. I've been kind of looking around for that, and in the recent days, and he has not.
Yeah. And Amy, as Tom mentioned, Representative Ashley Hinson, who was seated next to MTG in some photos from like first days of the new session, and people were commenting on that. I remember people wondering why she was next to Green, but she weighed in like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
She's being asked about Green and her comments. What was her response?
Well, I talked with her this morning. She holds a press call on Friday mornings. And she, doubled down in saying, I didn't vote. She wasn't one of the 11 Republicans that joined the majority Democrats in voting to strip her of the committee assignments. But she did say, her previous rhetoric and conduct were unacceptable. And if it happens in the future, she says she definitely will call party leadership to hold her accountable. But she thinks that that the body shouldn't be setting a precedent. She thinks it's a bad idea to punish people who were voted in by their constituents for their past conduct. That should be the priority of the voters to decide on that, not Congress. So it'll be interesting going forward if Marjorie Taylor Greene does continue with the rhetoric.
And what are the odds of that?
Yeah, right. You can see on Twitter, she's already saying, these are the 11 Republicans, we're going to go get them, in the elections and things like that. But you can sort of see she's not backing down. I think she knows her base, she was voted by her base. So I think, it'll be really interesting. She's got 2 years of no committee assignments. That's a tough prospect, it sunk Steve King. So you got to wonder if it's also going to sink MTG.
Yeah, that allowed Steve King to actually do town halls. I mean, he had been coming off a period with no town halls. And to be clear, he had announced that he was going to do town halls like a week before the New York Times piece all broke. But then it was interesting because then we could, every one of those town halls, the topic was, what is Steve King going to say about the committees? And I'm sorry, I'm way off on a tangent here, James. But
no, go ahead.
So these are 60-minute town halls, and I would say, and I saw a good chunk of them. For the first 20 minutes, he would re-air his grievances about the New York Times article. And so it would be about the 20-minute mark, he would finally take questions.
Yeah.
It was therapeutic for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, speaking of being off to a bad start, President Joe Biden is getting off to a good start. Roughly 17 days into his administration, a national Quinnipiac poll found that 61% of Americans are optimistic about the next 4 years with Joe Biden as president. A Gallup poll found that 57% had a job approval rating slightly below 57% job approval rating, which is slightly below the 60% historical average for presidents elected since World War II. And his 37% disapproval rating is among the highest for presidents first reading, second only to Donald Trump's 45% disapproval rating. Todd, how long will the honeymoon last?
Yeah, I'm not even sure presidents get honeymoons anymore. I think that sort of went out in the mid 90s. I think when George W. Bush won the disputed election with the votes in Florida, I don't think he got much of a honeymoon. And I think since then, new presidents, Obama, Trump, there there really just hasn't been this era, this period of good feeling after they take office. It's mostly been, okay, the losing side starts to strategize on how they can boot them in 4 years. So, but he's getting some stuff done, which is always seems to be popular. People like government to function. He's acting on some things that he campaigned on, climate and racial injustice and those issues. And he's doing what he can through executive orders, which isn't optimal. But as we just talked about, Congress is not exactly the most functional place on earth. So yeah, I think as long as he is getting things done that people like, he's poised now to get a COVID relief package through Congress, which I think a lot of people are waiting for and hoping for. So I would expect his job approval to stay fairly, in that upper 50, low 60 range for a while. But things come up, and there's going to be, the country's divided heavily. So yeah, that's about the best you can hope for, is to just sort of continue to function and get things done.
How important do you think is sort of this first impression of Biden? It may not last beyond a month or so, but I think we saw the
Well,
opposite thing happen with Donald Trump. I don't think he ever
yeah.
had that sort of, like you said, good feeling, that
Well,
era of
no, I
good
mean,
feeling.
yeah. Well, I mean, he gave an inaugural address that focused on American carnage. So
Right.
it wasn't. I mean, I don't think he was looking for a feel good moment. I think he was going to play on the fears that helped him get elected, and he continued to do that, obviously, through his presidency. But first impressions are important. I remember when Bill Clinton took office, one of the first things that happened is he got tangled up in the whole "don't ask, don't tell"
Hmm.
controversy, and I think that marred the first year of his presidency. He didn't get off on the right foot. His approval rating sagged. So yeah, I think Biden's doing I think they were prepared day one with the agenda that they were going to pursue through executive orders. And so it's kind of like a football team where you have that first 20 plays already mapped out before you start the game. I think that's what they had, and so far they've called a pretty good game plan.
So you're comparing Joe Biden to Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady?
Oh, well, I mean, Tom Brady's closer to him in age,
Yeah.
but no, I wouldn't.
But still only
I
half his
wouldn't.
age.
Well, and Joe Biden's record, in running for president, he's what is he, 1-3? So that's no,
Yeah.
not such a great record.
Right. I did notice that neither of these polls on the Biden presidency asked whether people missed presidential tweets. So I guess that's
Yeah,
well,
I don't think I do. It seems, yeah.
but there is
I think
this
my
big hole in your
blood pressure.
morning.
Yeah, well, I think my blood pressure's maybe down just a little bit because of that. Thanks, Twitter.
Yeah.
James, that reminds me, my first, in the last election cycle, the first time I was able to interview Biden one-on-one, turned this into a separate story, but I just asked him, how do you intend to use Twitter? Will you use it like Trump? And he really smiled. And he said, if I do have it, it will be completely different. But what Todd says is true. I mean, think of how much time we spend looking, like what is the how many was there, 15 of them from the overnight and such. And yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I wonder about the people that spent a lot of their time responding. I mean, I mean, there's just millions of people that were like, "You're terrible." I mean, they would have to do that. I mean, they do it multiple times a day. I wonder what they're doing now.
Productivity will soar.
Yeah, maybe they're doing puzzles or I don't know, something.
Something constructive, yeah.
Yeah.
Amy, Republicans like Chuck Grassley and Ashley Hinson have said they're willing to work with Joe Biden on pandemic relief, on tax relief, biofuels, lowering prescription drug costs, insert whatever your priority is here. And yet they seem to be drawing some lines in the sand. Should we expect bipartisanship to continue, or is this like halftime and the tribes have just changed ends of the field? The ins are out and the outs are running the White House and Congress now.
Right, right. I think they're probably realistic. Hanson's a freshman, so she's still learning how it all works. But I'm sure she's been paying attention, or should have been as a journalist, obviously, to what's been going on in Congress. Everybody's got their priorities. She was talking about how she, there are some things she agrees with. There are some things she doesn't. She, is obviously not on the side of including a $15 minimum wage bill in the COVID relief budget, saying that it, harms small businesses. She is against the PRO Act, which House Democrats just introduced, which she sees as a gift to union bosses. So there are still, even in the minority party, you can still make noise and let the people know that you're still fighting for the cause. Now, what that cause is for Republicans, maybe a matter of debate at this point. But I think for Hanson, it's still settled on the moderate side of things. The conservative, put more tax dollars back to you and make sure we're getting government regulation out. So I don't really see that changing. Whether it's going to influence bills that ultimately come out of there, I think she thinks that her more bipartisanship work will be better served in those committees, budget, appropriations that she's serving on, rather than the body as a whole, because obviously Republicans are in the minority and they're aware of it.
Yeah. Tom, quickly bring us up to date on the second district. Not big development this week, but there was a bit of news out of the Marionette Miller Meeks campaign.
Yeah. So Rita Hart's campaign and the Iowa Democratic Party have been highlighting that these 22 ballots that they argue were legally cast, but not counted or rejected due to errors by election workers, and saying that they should be counted and would reverse the outcome of the race and put Rita Hart ahead by 9 votes. So this week, we learned that the attorney for Marionette Miller Meeks was, I guess, apparently on the hunt for more rejected ballots, or was digging around in several counties that Marionette Miller Meeks had won handily, looking for a handful of rejected or uncounted ballots, ostensibly to hedge their bet should their motion to dismiss Hart's election contest be denied by the House Committee on Administration, and they decide to investigate the historically close 6-vote win. Miller Meeks' attorney has argued up to this point that all legal ballots have been counted, and that Rita Hart had cherry-picked ballots that put her ahead, though 3 of the 22 ballots that they identified were cast for Marionette Miller Meeks, and also contends that the ballots represent routine errors that occur in every election. However, in their motion to dismiss, Miller Meeks' lawyers did not present any additional ballots they say should also have been counted. But on Monday, like I said, her attorney was on the hunt for rejected absentee ballot envelopes. However, according to reporting today from the Iowa City Press Citizens, it appears that he didn't make it very far. In addition to reaching out to Appanoose County, he reportedly also contacted auditors and staff in Clark, Davis, Decatur, Henry, and Lee counties, asking for copies of any absentee or provisional ballots that were rejected during the November recount. But as I mentioned, what, if anything, he found in the hunt is not clear. The attorney did not return my messages, and a spokesman for Miller Meeks' campaign would not comment beyond saying that this was, conducting normal due diligence, quote, on all legal and factual issues presented by Rita Hart's effort to overturn the results of the election.
And so the saga continues.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom. Um, Looking ahead, this week, Lynn County Auditor Joel Miller announced he's exploring a run for Secretary of State. If he runs, I'm assuming it will be as a Democrat. It would be a battle of two Lynn County candidates who have repeatedly clashed on how to conduct elections. Sometimes it has seemed that Miller enjoyed more support from Lynn County Republicans than Democrats. He's been primaried and threatened to challenge Democratic incumbents. He changes the party affiliation to independent when he was seeking a seat on the county board. Todd, Miller didn't give a full-throated commitment to running. Is he just messing with Paul Pate?
It's possible. Although I think he probably is serious about potentially running. He, as you mentioned, he tried to run for the county board of supervisors as an independent. I think he's been auditor for I forget exactly how long, at least maybe 2 or 3 terms. I think maybe he's looking for other challenges. It seems so. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that he might run. Now, I mean, the biggest factor is who else is among Democrats is interested in running against Pate, because I mean Miller is well known in Lynn County, but I think beyond that, I'm not sure how well he's known throughout the state or in state Democratic Party circles. He has been sort of as you sort of mentioned, he's been kind of he's a Democrat, but Republicans don't nominate anyone to run against him because they like him, because he's clashed over the years with Democratic supervisors and other Democratic office holders over disputes, budgeting disputes and whether his office could audit and all of these different things. So he's a fairly controversial figure among local Democrats. You mentioned the primary challenges that he's drawn. So I'm not sure how much base of support he would have in Lynn County in a Democratic statewide primary, and beyond that, I don't know that he would have a statewide impact, but he's certainly got some ideas about how elections should be conducted. So I guess he would be, if he's going to bring those to the primary campaign, that would be welcome.
Yeah, I did notice that the day after the story about him exploring a run for Secretary of State appeared in the Gazette, I received a fundraising appeal from Pate. So I guess someone's taking it seriously.
Yeah, and I have not heard any other names. I mean, I don't.
No.
I mean, this is there isn't a lot of you know behind the scenes people talking about who's going to run for Secretary of State. That's
Yeah. Well, I
it's
mean,
important, but it's not so.
Deirdre DeGier ran,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people were pretty impressed by her. I don't know if she would run again or not. Um, Certainly, she's probably better known statewide than Joel Miller at this point, just because she's run a statewide campaign. But yeah, so it's not one of those positions that people tend to line up for this
Yeah.
far ahead of the election. So
Well, and if other Democrats conclude that Pate will probably win and they want to focus those resources on other races, legislature, governor, and stuff, I mean, it's possible that Miller could run and get the nomination, and
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Well, that's it for this edition of On Iowa Politics. But before we go, we can't sign off without saying goodbye to one of our colleagues. This will be Bret's last podcast with us. Bret, was it something we said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's you've just botched so many podcasts, James. I just couldn't persevere any longer. So.
I'm surprised anybody's lasted this long.
Yeah.
Leave while you can.
Yeah.
Wait, we can leave?
Yeah. So this is my last podcast. This is actually my last day for the Sioux City Journal after about 18 and a half years. And perhaps the end of, it appears, 25 years of journalism. I worked at the Carroll Times-Herald before I came here. And it's funny, I think a few weeks ago, I thought about it and didn't think I didn't know if that sounded too unprofessional or whatever, but I did throw out my farewell column. my career completely overlapped with Steve King's. I came in 2002, which was his first for the U.S. House as he won, and Steve King exited about 5 weeks ago when he did not win re-election after 18 years. And I guess maybe I just couldn't put up with not having Steve King to cover on a daily basis, I guess. So, and I guess my point is that I outlasted him, so to speak, by about a month. But yes, I'm moving on to a position at Briarcliff University, sort of administrative post here in Sioux City, and happy for that opportunity. But I really enjoyed the podcast over the years, and this will show, I guess, my lack of show prep. But how far back how many years have we been doing the podcast? 5 or 6?
At least 6.
Okay.
I mean, Mike Weiser started it, so I'm guessing it's like maybe 7 years ago we started this. Yeah. Aaron could tell us how long he's been doing it, and then we could add a year or two. But Aaron couldn't be here today, but he didn't want to let you go without saying goodbye.
Hey everyone, and Bret, I'm sorry I couldn't make it for your last podcast, but I wanted to record this message so I could say, and so all our listeners could hear, that as you leave us and the Sioux City Journal, I'm of course very happy for you, but also selfishly very sad to see you go. Bret, for nearly 20 years, you have produced outstanding political coverage and more for readers in Siouxland and all over the state. And for me personally, Bret, you've been a tremendous colleague and partner on this League Gazette political coverage team. Your collaboration and counsel have been invaluable, and I'll miss those things greatly. And on top of that, you've been not only a tremendous colleague, but I also consider you a friend. Now, having said all that, I hope to someday actually meet you in person. So, Bret, congratulations on the job. Extremely well done, and all the best in the next adventure. And thank you.
It just
I think Aaron speaks for all of us here on the podcast, and wish you the best of luck at Briarcliff, and hope you become a listener.
That's right. Yeah. Why would I stop now?
Right. Well, this really is it for this edition of On Iowa Politics. And of course, you can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Dead Larry will take us out. If you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics on iTunes and Stitcher. For Bret, Amie, Tom, Todd, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.
There's a lid. It's holding in my sanity. It's like $26.44. I want to know now, 'cause I'm getting old now and I'm shaking. Well, that's good for you, but it's bad for me. So good for you. Now there's nothing left to lose but my humanity. There is a lid on top of this place. The guns flying off, we fly to outer space. 'Cause I wanna know now, 'cause I'm getting cold now and I'm shaking. Well, that's good for you, but it's bad for me. So good for you. Now there's nothing left to lose but my humanity. I'm getting sold now.